And we're going to really talk about cultural competence, but really from the perspective of facilitating diversity in our profession. And so we'll talk through some topics related to that, and then also what we're doing to hopefully address increasing diversity. And this is the part that will count towards your ethics hour. So just an important part of the new Vision 2025 put out by AOTA. Are you all familiar with our new vision? This states that we will maximize health, well-being, and quality of life for all people. And the use of that phrase, all people, was quite deliberate. There were several of us who were involved in the crafting of this statement, and all people was deliberately used to reflect an embracing of diverse populations that we're serving as therapists. So just quickly, so you know a little bit about us. I don't know if Dennis went through some of this, but we have been around for a long time at OSU and have tried to respond to changing times, changing conditions, healthcare environments. And so this is just another response, our shift over to holistic admissions. We're still doing well. We're ranked 12. We're really happy about that. Our students are doing very well. In fact, our pass rate last year on NBCOT was 100%, which, yay, we're so excited about. Yay! And then I'll tell you the secret, that the national average was 98%. So really, we're not that awesome, but we are. So right now we are admitting 48 students a year. We have lots of applications to look through, and we are admitting those students into the OTD that Dennis talked about. And some of those students elect to do what's called the dual degree. Did you talk about the dual degree at all? So we have 1 or 2 students every year who really are interested in a career in research or in academia, and those students will be, once they're admitted into the OT program, they are able to apply for admission into our PhD program, and they actually will start their PhD while in the program, which ends up shortening their time in the PhD by about a year, typically. And then, of course, we have the PhD, which clinicians can come and enroll in as well. But the track that we admit into is that OTD PhD program. So our new curriculum really emphasizes, obviously, clinical practice. We have a large emphasis on translation of knowledge into practice, and then professional development and leadership. We're hoping that we can continue to produce OTs who will drive our profession forward, be our legacy for those of us who are perhaps on our way out. I'm not supposed to make any jokes. No joke. Sorry, that wasn't on the list. And then we have lots of, he's laughing, he's so worried he's leaving. Where's she going? She's off script. Yeah. So we have lots of opportunities as well beyond our traditional curriculum. We have specializations in research in global health, which has become incredibly popular. And I have to tell you that the students who are coming in to be interviewed for admission into the program are asking us about the global health specialization. They are asking us about international fieldwork, and they're asking us about international doctoral experiences. They are extremely globally oriented. We do offer specializations also in rehab engineering, neuro rehab, pediatrics, geriatrics. So we have lots of opportunities for students in our program to specialize. And this year, in our first years, I think it's half or more, over half, have declared a specialization. So students who will be coming out of the program to you will have advanced training in one of these areas already before they've even graduated. They're getting a lot of clinical time, over 1,800 hours of clinical time, and that is increasing constantly because the students are requesting that, and we're also hearing feedback from clinical educators who are also saying, you know, we want these students to be as independent and as comfortable as possible. Our fieldwork educators are fabulous, so thank you. Our students love you, and they recommend you to their peers. And we have our clinical simulation lab, which we are using all the time now. It's in Pryor, and we can access standardized patients and the clinical simulation equipment, and we run labs in there just for OTs. We run labs in there that are interdisciplinary, so they're working with the physical therapists. We also have large clinical labs that are run with nursing and pharmacy and OT and PT that are designed as a grand rounds where the students are rounding with standardized patients. So we've been using that a lot. One of the reasons we're able to use it more is it is now free, and so we like when it doesn't cost us money. So we're over there all the time. And then we have lots of service learning opportunities as well. So our students are, I think, are every year getting more and more exposure to the clinic and should be coming out more and more prepared. And then we have lots of interprofessional opportunities, which I just talked about. So most of that is in the context of interprofessional laboratory experiences, though our first year OT students are spending their first year with the first year PT students in anatomy and evidence-based practice. Research is still rolling along. We're doing great. So lots of our students are employed in our labs. We have over 20 who are either volunteering or employing in the faculty research labs. We have been very fortunate with landing lots of grants, so we have a very active program where we are pulling in about $2 million a year in grant funding. So we feel like we're contributing and feel very active and proud of that. And then we're, of course, disseminating our work as well through publications and presentations. So the faculty is very active, as you can see. And there we are. I think that is all of us. So now you've got a little bit about us. So what do we mean when we talk about cultural competence, and why do we think about it in school? I mean, we were talking about cultural competence when I was in OT school, and we were talking about diversity when I was in OT school. So why are we still talking about it now? And because it's important, and we have to continue the conversation about embracing diversity and becoming culturally competent in order to provide the best quality of care that we can. So an overview of cultural competence is that really we are talking about taking that knowledge that you have and integrating it into your practice, into your clinic policies, your standards of care, the attitudes with which you and your peers approach people from different kinds of backgrounds. It really involves understanding the belief systems of the people that we're taking care of, understanding, interpretation. How many of you work with interpreters? Yeah, we have not been doing a good job addressing this, and it's just really starting to come out that we need to start talking to the students about what it's like working with interpreters before they come out. It's amazing how widespread that is. So we're constantly improving too. So it's also about facilitating learning, and that is something that I think OTs are fairly strong in, facilitating learning, and then making sure that cultural competency is part of your culture, part of your organization, and that this is just something that exists within the structure of your organization. If you're looking to enhance your understanding of cultural competence, to share information, to do some training, there are actually terrific resources available for you. CDC has a nice website that addresses cultural competence, and so does the Department of Health and Human Services. Both of those are free resources, and they really talk about healthcare and cultural competency and effective communication. So if we're doing that, and of course, as I said, I was talking about this years ago in OT school, is this enough? Can we stop, or do we need to continue addressing these? And really, we are feeling that we need to continue this conversation about competency and about diversity. So how many of you have heard of implicit bias? Okay, so some of you have. Have any of you who've heard of it taken any tests about? You have. So the implicit bias testing is really interesting. Implicit bias really refers to those unconscious beliefs that you have, you don't even know you have, that were formed when you were growing up based on what you saw on TV, what you observed in your neighborhood, who you played with, what your parents said, what you saw at school. All of these things that shape who we are shape biases that we grow up with. And then as we become adults, we have overt conscious ideas about people, and we start to address those ideas consciously and say, well, I don't want to be biased. I want to be fair. But that unconscious underlying bias remains, and we may not know that we have it. And Project Implicit is out of Harvard. I think I have the link for you. I do. They have a number of tests that cover all of these topic areas. And basically, you are looking at pictures and words, and they are timing how long you're making associations. So it really is measuring in milliseconds whether there are differences in the associations you make between different words and different people. And the findings can be quite startling. We began looking at implicit bias when the medical school came in and started to talk to us about the transformation in their admissions process. So the medical school, and now medical schools across the country have moved in this direction, recognized that quality of healthcare was significantly compromised when the workforce is not diverse. And that in order for us to improve and to even provide quality health care, we have to not only increase diversity in our healthcare providers, but we have to develop a recognition and an understanding of those unconscious biases that come out when we're taking care of patients. So I'll give you an example that they've used with us, and there's quite a lot of research about this. One particular study provided physicians with two medical records, identical medical records. It was a copy. It was the same record twice. One record had a Caucasian male photograph on the front, and one had an African American male on the photograph on the front. And they asked them, without mentioning anything about what they were actually looking for, they just had these physicians reviewing the cases and making decisions about the course of care. And what they found was that the recommendations for medical treatment were different, based only on the race of the individual. So if they saw somebody who was white, they recommended, and this was overall, I mean, these were many physicians who as a group, made different treatment recommendations based solely on the photograph. There are countless studies about this. There are studies that they've done this with attorneys who are interviewing candidates for positions in a law firm, or who are reviewing qualifications of applicants, and they put different photographs on these applications. And there are stark differences in how they judge these applicants based only on how that person looks. So we understand through massive amounts of work that's been done in this area that we are influenced without even understanding it, without even knowing it, in how we provide health care based on biases we don't even know we have. And what can be hard is that you might be someone who has spent your adult life advocating for equality, for diversity, and take a test and realize that you carry all these biases. So we went through this training. It was a great experience. One of the best recommendations that we had when we went through the testing was, if you do this as a group, make sure you have somebody to facilitate a discussion following this. So as a school, we took these tests and we had discussions about them. And there were several ground rules. One was, no one ever has to reveal the results of their test. So if you learn that you have a bias towards people with obesity, you don't have to tell all your colleagues that that bias is sitting there. Because this is not your fault, right? This is just lurking in your head. The first step is understanding that it's there. The next step is saying, I recognize it. Now I need to pay attention to it. And once we can pay attention to it, we can start taking action to correct it. So that's ground rule number one. Ground rule number two is understanding that this is unconscious. So as you have discussions, we cannot be judging each other. You need to have a safe environment. So if you take this out of here and you run these kinds of groups at work with your colleagues, the environment has to be safe, because this can be upsetting. One of the interesting findings that has come out of some of the medical schools that have done this is that female doctors have a bias against women in science. No, against. And so they are assigning there, and by the way that is manifested is that they are more comfortable with women in more traditional either roles or fields of study, and more comfortable with men in science. And these are all female scientists. So that's why I think it's just important to understand. It doesn't mean that anybody in here is going to score one way or the other. It's just important to understand that these reflect the way that you were raised. And once you understand it's there, it's easier to start to sort of say, well, you know, I recognize that I might be judging in a certain way without even realizing it, but I want to make sure that I pay attention to it and I don't. Questions on implicit bias? I mean, we could talk for hours just on implicit bias. Okay. I'm just going to give that a moment. It's a dumpster. It's not going. Okay. All right. So one of the issues I hope that I've made clear is that when we have implicit or unconscious biases, it impacts our ability to provide quality health care. that we are making decisions about the course of treatment for our clients based on good clinical reasoning and available evidence, and possibly these unconscious biases that are lurking there. So what is a solution other than understanding that those biases might be there? Well, the movement in healthcare and healthcare education is to increase the diversity of healthcare providers, because the more we are surrounded by people who have diverse backgrounds, the more we understand them, right? And we might be able to maybe overcome some of those biases to increase understanding. And that diversity in healthcare provision has to start at the educational level. We need to be recruiting students who have what we call diversity of background and thought and experience. Understanding that diversity carries with it lots and lots of different groups of people. AOTA also has some ideas about promoting diversity from a population level. How can we try and draw young people into our profession, create opportunities so that they might be attracted into occupational therapy? We can encourage inclusion of OT as a healthcare profession option in middle schools and high schools, for example, that are in traditionally underrepresented communities. On a group level, we can make sure that we're providing training and education to students. That we can embed information about cultural sensitivity, about implicit bias into our curriculum. Embed information about the importance of a diverse workforce into our education so that students become more aware of what their own biases may be. We can also be open about discussions. Have open discussions about cultural competence, about diversity, about the different backgrounds of the students, even in our classes, so that they can understand and celebrate the differences. And then, of course, in the individual level, we can advocate for OT. We can advocate and educate communities that typically don't provide students into our programs, or may not even know what OT is, and provide mentorship to younger students, which, many high schools across Ohio are developing high schools that are specifically focused on health sciences professions. So as OTs, it's helpful for us to be able to get out into those high schools and talk to those students about opportunities to within OT and encourage them to seek education. So, what did we do? We developed what's called an admissions vision, because we want these students, we want to try and recruit students who are able to bring something different, something broad into our classroom. And so we spent a long time talking about what students, and actually a number of you, I'm sure, participated in some of our discussions on this. What do OT students need to look like? A central feature of our admissions vision is this idea that we are looking to select students who display diversity in background, experience, and thought. And that is deliberately and purposefully there to encourage students who have done something a little different and may think they don't want me because I'm not a traditional student. Hopefully a statement like that says, yes, actually we do. We are interested in all sorts of experiences. We're interested in you who have done a, straight from high school into college and, got a great GPA in undergrad and did everything, very traditionally. And we're interested in you who took several years off and did mission work in Rwanda and then came back and did part-time and then transferred to a different kind of school. We're interested in that person too. And by stating that up front, hopefully we can encourage people who may not have thought that this kind of program was for them to apply into our program. Ohio State in general, as most of you will know, of course, embraces and values diversity. And Ohio State seeks to provide an environment that is inclusive and is supportive. So if we can welcome students from these diverse backgrounds to apply, we also need to make sure that they understand they'll be included and valued once they're here. So Ohio State specifically identifies several groups as diverse groups that are celebrated and supported at Ohio State. We also have groups that are part of that when we think about diversity of background and experience and thought. We've broadened that, so some examples of what we feel brings diversity to OT are first-generation college students, military veterans, individuals with disabilities, caregivers, so people who may not be typically considered diverse, but from our perspective, bring that diversity of background and experience to the classroom and can share that with their classmates once they're admitted. So just a little bit of background on diversity in our profession. So, is this really a problem for us? Well, 82% of the OT workforce was composed of white, either Hispanic or non-Hispanic conditions. 82%. So we had 4% Black, 6% Asian, 7% other, less than 1% Native and Pacific Islanders. So that is not a profession that is saying, hey, all of you of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, we'd love to have you. Those numbers don't say that. So this is why we have to look at this. And if we go back to this idea of implicit bias and how it affects quality of care, if 82% of us look the same, then we have to understand that at some level, quality of care could be impacted. So it is really important, and that's just talking about race and ethnicity. That's not talking about any other groups who would be considered underrepresented or diverse. OTA programs and OT programs also tend not to be diverse. So I think we were before we started holistic admissions, our racial and ethnic diversity in OSU OT school was about 4%. So very low. So why does diversity matter? Well, I think I've talked about that enough. Really, socioculturally diverse therapists are better equipped to approach clients and treatment sessions with a global perspective, are able to incorporate unique backgrounds and life experiences into culturally appropriate treatment. And this comes from not only being a member of a diverse group, but understanding all of those diverse groups and having been educated with a cohort of students who can speak to what their experiences have been. So we do feel that increasing diversity in our workforce and in our student body will ultimately improve the profession and improve the quality of the treatment that we're providing. And there is a group, just in case anyone's interested in getting involved, on the national level. COTAD is a national level organization of academics and practitioners who are working on issues around diversity and OT and how can we increase diversity in the profession. And so that's cotad.org for any of you who are interested. So we are obviously, we're on the education end, right, of trying to increase diversity in the profession. So we're thinking about how can we welcome and recruit and include students of diverse backgrounds. And the first step is that recruiting them to us, recruiting them to apply. So what kind of admissions process can we use that will help facilitate an environment that really values diversity? So we are using what's called holistic admissions, which comes out of the medical schools, and we have really embraced the process that the OSU Medical School has used that was championed by Quinn Capers, who's a cardiologist here at the Med Center, and the director of admissions for the medical school. And so this has really been something driven by him, and has been an amazing experience for us to transition to this approach. So in the past, our admissions process reviewed applications, and we scored all of our applicants on the experiences that they've had, and did they write in their essay that they understood OT, and did they seem like they were compassionate, just on a paper scoring. And that was about 30% of their overall score. And then the remainder of their admissions score was based on GPA, GRE, and prerequisite GPA. So we were unbelievably biased towards academic metrics, which is similar in many graduate programs across the country. And our joke in the faculty is that none of us would get into our own program. So those of you who graduated, congratulations, you're smarter than all of us. So holistic admission says you are immediately biasing your applicant pool by focusing only on those students who had the opportunity to get good grades and score well in the GRE. And we know that good grades and the GRE are biased scores, that they favor people who didn't have to work all through college, or who went through really excellent high schools with lots of preparation for test taking, or who had parents who paid for tutors. So these are already scores that are biased, and yet it was representing most of our application process, and again, many applications across the country. Holistic admission says no, you have to look at a 30%, one-third, one-third, one-third split in your application process. So academic metrics are worth 1/3 of the admission, not 2/3. It's 1/3. And then you have 1/3 that is experiences. So what have these applicants done? And those can be really different. Has this person, led an effort to feed the homeless? Has this person gone on a mission trip to Rwanda? Has this person served in Afghanistan? What experiences has this person had? And then finally, another third about attributes. So what are the attributes that are important for OTs? And we'll talk to you about how we came up with all these in a minute. But we have to look at, compassion and empathy and self-direction. That's 1/3 of the score. So we're looking at a whole person now, where we thought we were before. That we now know we're much more holistic at this point with this third split. And they're all equally weighted. And really our focus is looking at what is the value that this student can contribute to the program and then to the profession at large. Our process includes 3 stages. Every application that is complete is screened now. So whereas we used to read the top 100 or so applications, last year, this last admissions cycle, I think we read 250 applications, and they were all screened and scored. And we'll go through I have a really very simple to read, and you're going to laugh when you see it because it's not, but chart that shows you our process. But students following that screen, and they get a score, the students the top scoring students, this year is about 120, are then invited to campus for interviews. And they spend 3 hours or so with us. They spend an hour listening to me talk about Yay OT and Yay OSU OT. They get a tour of campus, and then they spend about an hour interviewing. And we'll talk a little bit about what those look like. And then following that, we have the admissions committee meets and makes a decision about who's going to be admitted. And because we are now looking much more broadly, we are hoping that we will see more diversity. Now, the medical school did. They did see a change. Of course, one of their measures was that they needed more women. So we're trying to convince them that we need more men. that would be more balanced. So what does this process look like of developing an admissions vision and an idea about attitudes, experiences, and metrics? So we start with what is our mission. And our mission in OT is to improve lives through innovation in research, service, and education, looking for highly qualified OTs to come out of our program who are ethical and focused on health and well-being. That's our mission. So right now we know that this matches with the mission of a land-grant university, which is OSU, with research, service, and education, and that we are concerned with the people of Ohio and the global community, which is in line with the mission of the university as well. So now when we start crafting who we want, we need to make sure that we are looking for students who match our mission. Same with vision. So what do we see OSU OT as? Well, we want to be preeminent, of course, and we want to be a leader in scholarship and leadership, research, in education, service, and practice. So obviously we are valuing research, and of course that is a major aspect of Ohio State. And we are valuing leadership, and we are valuing, of course, education and practice. So this is the process that we went through to design our mission, or our vision, our admissions vision, and then those experiences and attributes. So we started with the School of Health and Rehab Sciences admissions vision, because we did this as a school as well. How can we increase diversity across all healthcare professions that we're training in our school? Then we looked at the OT mission and vision, which I just showed you. And then we identified all the people who we felt could contribute to this discussion on what attributes are important and what experiences are important for A, success in our program, given the kind of program we are, and B, success as OTs. So we talked amongst ourselves, we talked to students, current students, and asked them, what do you think the 3 top attributes and experiences are that would make you successful in the program and make future students successful in the program. We talked to clinical educators, fieldwork educators about the same thing. Tell us the top 3 attributes and experiences you would like to see in our students. What's important to you, and what do you think will make them successful both on fieldwork and as practitioners? And then we talked to our advisory board and we asked them the same questions. So we got input from our advisory board, from clinicians, from students, and from faculty about what are the top 3. And everyone individually gave us the top 3, and from that we had to, sort through and figure out what were the sort of top 10. Then what we did was we mapped our stakeholder, all these attributes and experiences, to a vision statement. And we also reviewed our curriculum to look at whether there was some match between what people were saying students needed to look like and what we were teaching. So I go back to the example of research. We really have a heavy emphasis on research. And so we want to make sure that students who are coming in have an interest in science and evidence and research. They don't have to have worked in a research lab. But students who have that curiosity and that inquiry are the ones who are going to do well and succeed in the program. And we combined all of that into our vision statement, and this is what it looked like. So we had our list of attributes and experiences, and then we mapped them to a vision. And sometimes we used exactly the same word, and of course we were collapsing lots of words into bigger topics. Passionate about OT, for example, included empathy and compassion. So those are definitely collapsed into categories. But this is how we drafted our vision. So really, in our effort to increase diversity in our applicants, and then our student body, and then hopefully in the profession, was a really purposeful process and a long process. And we spent really good reflective time on trying to develop what this was going to look like. And then this is published on our website so applicants understand that these are the things that we're valuing. So this is what it ended up. We're seeking self-directed learners who are resilient, insightful, and ethical. Ideal candidates are motivated to become empathetic occupational therapists, providing evidence-based, collaborative, client-centered care. The division selects students who display diversity in background, experience, and thought, and who demonstrate the potential to improve people's lives through innovation, excellence, leadership in practice, research, education, and service. And we felt that this was specific to our mission, our vision, and our curriculum, grounded in the community of stakeholders we interviewed, and also open, so that applicants with a wide variety of backgrounds would feel that somewhere they could see themselves there. It doesn't say we seek top performing academic students. It says we're looking for more than that. And that's just how it maps to our mission and vision. And really we put this in here because it's important to understand that for us, developing an admissions vision for OSU OT meant really reflecting on the university and the school and the division's overall mission and vision, and that our admissions vision might look really different at a different kind of institution. So, and I've worked at lots of different kinds of institutions, And, some of them have much less emphasis on research and much greater emphasis on service and community service and community practice. And so their vision might be much more focused on that. So these were the attributes, and thank you to anyone who participated in our groups trying to come up with these. Resilient students, so we wanted students who were self-directed, who were independent, who were flexible, persistent, who took initiative. One thing we heard loud and clear was students coming out now really need to be able to take feedback. So we ask questions in our interviews related to taking feedback or examples of when you didn't succeed, when you failed. Passionate for OT, so is this person compassionate? Are they interested in helping others? Genuine? Do they have good bedside manner? Are they ethical? Do they have integrity? I can tell you that when we interview students or applicants, we have a very strict rubric that we follow. It's a C. They rotate through 4 people. They have, each person has 3 questions on a topic area, like ethics or leadership. They ask their questions and they score the students. And students can get anywhere from a 0 to a 3. So a 1, a 2, or a 3 means that they just get a score. Student who scores a 0 means that that interviewer has such concerns about one aspect that that student is then discussed at committee regarding whether they should even progress. And so an example of something that came out in our ethics questions was just a question of an applicant about cheating. And what would you do if you knew somebody was cheating? And the applicant's response was, I wouldn't do anything. Everybody cheats in neuroscience, or whatever the class was. And so, that was a decision on so many levels. We had concerns about that. Like, really? That's what you're going to tell the professor who's interviewing you? So, the interviews are interesting because of what does come out, and that students who are talking to us, might find that their application is called into question because of an answer like that. And so that's what we're hoping to get at with the interviews, is an understanding. Now, the vast majority of the students who come through for interviews, those of you who've participated with us, have been fabulous, and we're still saying, we don't know how to choose, you're all great. So good communication, critical thinking. Experiences. So experiences, we really wanted experiences to be broad, so that students would get credit for a wide variety of experiences. So we called these life experiences. And so we're scoring people on life experiences. So were they involved in academic experience? So that might be your captain of the field hockey team who played 4 years of varsity sports, who comes in with a lower GPA because she was captain of the varsity field hockey team, right? I mean, so we know that student potentially may not have the higher grades, but they were doing something pretty impressive. Is that student going to be someone who displays leadership and communication and gives and takes feedback? Probably. That's a big job. Someone who comes in and says, tells us or writes in their application they've done research and they've been working in someone's lab. We have students who have papers already published. That's also going to get them credit. Is it someone who's worked all through school? Because we do have people whose grades might be lower because they funded their undergraduate education by working full-time. And we need to be able to give them credit for sustained employment, as well as, of course, resilience and initiative and all of those other things that are reflected in someone who's done that. Someone who's done amazing community service, volunteer work, and then, of course, healthcare related experience as well. We do want to know that they've actually observed OT, because every so often we do get the person who puts in their essay, you know, I love OT, and when I apply to physical therapy school, I'm like, okay, no, you can't just cut and replace here, you know, it's no. So we want to know you want to be an OT. So we look at those qualities that sort of transcend each of those individual experiences. So we're really looking for examples of leadership in any of those, breadth and depth in any of those, teamwork in any of those, and professional behaviors. So those knowledge, skills, and behaviors on the bottom there, we can assess those in any or all of those life experiences. So that's what we're doing, and we're hoping to get a wide variety of experiences. In terms of our academic metrics, we've always said minimum 3.0, but honestly, our average GPA for the last several years has been a 3.8, 3.7. So students had to do really well to get into the program. And the GRE analytic, which is the writing, critical writing, we require a minimum of a 3.0, but we don't have a cutoff for GRE scores as a whole. People just get points. So if you have a 4.0, you're going to get points for that, right? We're going to score a 4.0 high. That's awesome. You know, I mean, the person who's a 4.0, do we not want them? We're not saying that. No, they are going to get a high score. Students who blow their GRE away, awesome. We'll give you a lot of points for that. That's fantastic. But we won't, it's not like you'll be eliminated if you're on the lower end. So this is how we do it. We screen, as I said, and we screen for those metrics that I just talked about, GPA, GRE, and the prerequisite GPA. And students, applicants are awarded points based on how well they did academically. We also give them a score on their paper application for attributes that we can get from that application, and then experiences that we can get from the application. Based on that, they get a total score of each of those weighted a third, and the top 120 or so are invited for an interview. So we could have a student whose GPA is lower, but whose attributes and experiences are so amazing that they are scoring in our top 120. And a student who didn't have a lot of experience during school but has a 4.0, they'll score really well and also be invited in for the interview. So we'll have a variety of students, and we have, who come in. When they come in for their interview, they are interviewed and they're scored again. We don't look at their GPA or their academics. That's not going to change. That's just going to, you know, we've already scored that. We know what that looks like. But we do additional scoring on attributes and experiences. We add their attributes from their application to their attributes from their interview. We get a total score. We get another score for experience. We have our score for academics. We add those together, and then we rank them based on each of those areas. So we have students who have a 3.9 GPA, and their GREs are in the 75th percentile. They're obviously very accomplished academically. They're compassionate. They have passion for OT, and they have observed countless OTs. And because they've spent all their time doing that, their experiences are lower. But they end up scoring somewhere, let's say, a 4 or a 5. The same scoring is applied to a student who has a 3.4 and whose GREs are in the 50th percentile, but has an amazing passion for OT, has done a lot of work in healthcare, and was an officer in the armed forces in Afghanistan and formed a support group for vets with PTSD when he or she came home. So the GPA might be lower, but the experiences are so amazing that ultimately that person ends up with a score of 4 or 5. And so we end up with a class that looks diverse. So we have our class now that will start in June. I don't have all their demographic information in yet, so I don't know what they look like. But after our first year of doing this, when we didn't do it great, we did okay, we didn't do great. Just looking at racial and ethnic diversity, we went from 4% to 17%. So we saw a big jump. We didn't see a big jump in gender distribution. So we're working on that. However, it's moving in the right direction. And so our hope is that as we continue these efforts, we can deliver to you the next generation of OTs who really are coming out of school with that perspective.